name's Bond. James Bond.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today we are reviewing the Omega Seamaster 300m. This, of course, is the 2018 version. So very, very exciting. And the UGWC actually voted on which of the new Seamasters they wanted to see, and there was an overwhelming landslide result for this one, which I'm really, really glad, because it's got some traits that the other new Seamasters do not have, which are very, very interesting. And I think you'll see in a moment just how clever this design update is. And a massive thank you to Moyo Jewelers in Carmel, Indiana, because not only have they lent in this, which has literally just arrived from the factory, but also a 2017 version, which I have reviewed before, so I can compare and really demonstrate the differences and the refinement that's gone into the design. So I better do wristwatch check before I completely forget. There's the Laurier. Yeah, this has spent a lot of time on my wrist, still absolutely loving it. And yeah, you could say kind of Seamaster 300 inspired, well, the mid-century ones. Very cool. Anyway, before we get into this, I should really explain something that I'm not going to go into the history of the Seamaster line or the brand, because I've already done that extensively when I reviewed this last year. So I'll leave a link up there. Actually, I'll leave a link in the description in case you can't click on this one. And if I forget, please do remind me. Where I go into the story of the Seamaster from its origins in 1948 all the way up to the modern incarnation. Well, at the time, this was the latest version. It's a lustrous history being used by the SAS, the SBS, you know, countless iterations. And it's Omega's longest running watch line. It's such an incredible story. So really, to give this review some context, have a look at that. Also, recently, if I just bring it in, I marked the 1 year anniversary since buying this, which, if you're not familiar, this is the CK2292, aka the Spitfire watch. If it wasn't for the success of the 30 T2 caliber based watches of World War II, there wouldn't have been the Seamaster line. This, in a strange kind of way, this is like the precursor, the ancestor of the modern Seamaster. And we'll come back to this because it ties in quite nicely to today's review. So this 2018 update marks the 25th anniversary of the modern Seamaster, what I like to call the Bond Seamaster, really. If you're like me, you will have that special connection to James Bond. It was GoldenEye that got me into the Seamasters. In fact, whenever I see one of these Seamaster, the 300s, I'm automatically get that nostalgia. I remember the days playing GoldenEye on the N64, and it just takes me back. And it was my first luxury watch, and they're great luxury watches. They really are. So what's changed? What's new? Well, I should explain there are 14 variations in total of the new one. There are 6 models in steel, 8 in gold and steel, including their Segner rose gold, yellow gold, and there's also a limited edition in titanium, tantalum, and Segner gold. So let's get the basic specifications out the way. We have a large diameter of 42 millimeters. We have a height of 13.2 millimeters. Lug to lug, we're looking at 50 millimeters, and then a lug width of 20 millimeters. So a size increase, which is really surprising. If we just remind ourselves, the older version was 41mm. There are, of course, the mid-size versions. Interestingly, they share the same lug width and a 3mm increase on the lug to lug, but the height is almost roughly the same, just a smidgen larger on the new one. The case is entirely stainless steel, of course. That same mix of satin finishes on the side, the high polished, large beveled lugs there. We have a ceramic insert. This time the white of the ceramic bezel is enamel and of course is scratch resistant. The bracelet has also been updated. They're slightly less round now, a little bit flatter. The center links have also been thinned, screwed links of course. A brand new clasp, this is quite refreshing, not only including a diver extension, but if I show you inside there, if it will focus, come on, there we go. Yeah, now we have the extendable rack and pusher system. Push that down and you can simply slide it to the desired amount. Long overdue that the 300 had this. The pusher extension enables you to have an additional 33mm if you so require. However, you are limited to the ratcheted positions. Also, it's worthy to note that you can get these on the rubber straps as well in a choice of either blue or black. It's beautifully constructed. We have that typical double push button clasp, beveling there, the brushed finish, signed of course. They've kept that iconic 90s tank tread style bracelet, loved by many, loathed by equally just as many people. To me, it's not a Seamaster 300 unless it has it. Solid end links, of course. And optically, it looks like 9 links, but it's still just 5 with the, the little bit of high polishing and that beautiful satin finish. Yeah, it's so indicative of the Seamaster 300. They've retained the scalloped bezel there with unidirectional, of course. 120 click, very difficult to do with gloves on. Yeah, I was never a fan of them. They look great, that beautiful scalloped edge, but practically with gloves, it's always been a bit of a difficulty in reviews, but normal life, it's not as bad. The action, I have to say, is very, very solid. There's little wiggle at all. Let's just line it up. Don't want to. There we go. There's very little play, which is fantastic. The bezel insert is this wonderful kind of royal blue, slightly reminiscent of the early Aquis, Oris Aquises, but lighter, of course. I would almost describe it as a Persian blue. The crystal is a domed, scratch-resistant sapphire. We have anti-reflective coating on both inside and out, and it's framed beautifully by the bezel. It continues the line of that curvature flush with the bezel. Now, what's interesting is the lugs have gotten larger as well. The end of them, if you see, compared to the older one, is more flat. The main crown itself has also grown slightly larger, but it's quite remarkable how it changes the tactile experience. A vast improvement in my opinion, and the crown guards are also ever so slightly more substantial respectively. But the main change has to be the conical style helium escape valve. It actually reminds me of like a cupcake. Juts out a little bit more. If you see on the older one, it was recessed slightly into the case. Practically, it's a lot more accessible, certainly easier to turn. However, it's definitely more noticeable now. But the most astonishing change of all has to be that dial. So let's discuss that dial a little bit. I really thought when I first saw it, it was a sandwich dial, but actually it's laser etched, quite deep grooves. And we see a return of the wave pattern, which a lot of people really missed in the previous incarnation. So from 1993 to 2011, there was that kind of relief wave pattern that was, now we're going to talk about audio, but the wavelength wasn't as long, more kind of choppy waters, shall we say. 2012 to 2017, they went with the plain gloss. But the dial itself is really bang up to date. It's also ceramic, gorgeous sunburst effect, a very smoky fossil gray. The ceramic is Omega's answer to enamel, basically. So ceramic doesn't age, there's no oxidation, no tarnishing. So it's a lot more impervious to all the rigors and of course moisture. So the perfect solution. The detail on the dial is absolutely splendid. I mean, really sharp edges. We have sector style markings for the minute track running around the outside. Just look at that metallic graphite texture there. It's very contemporary looking. Even the shape of the waves, the way the date window is positioned, the waves are actually symmetrical too, but it gives a nice feeling of depth. The applied markers have also increased in size. If we compare it to the older one there, you can see a lot larger. To match the hands on this particular version, it's blued. They also sit a little bit taller, giving them a very three-dimensional aspect. Now, the bluing of the hands, these very iconic skeletonized hands, and as I move it there, you can see that it's slightly faceted with different shapes to distinguish the minutes from hours. And also the superluminova of the minute hand is a shade of green compared to the markers and the loom pip at the 12 o'clock. So the orientation is absolutely fantastic. Not only that, they've moved the date from the 3 o'clock down to the 6, giving it a lot more symmetry, balance, and I just love the way they've matched the date wheel to the color of the dial. What is also interesting, if you notice, they've got rid of the applied Omega logo, and this is for very, very specific reasons. If we bring in my little World War II CK2292, the blued hands are a little nod to history, a little reference to its ancestor. Because let's not forget that even though this is a pilot's watch, there wouldn't have been a Seamaster without the success of Omega's watches in World War II. But a clever little nod. And not only that, with blued hands, they also are more resistant to tarnishing, oxidation, and generally longer lasting in their longevity. The way they play with the light is just beautifully elegant. You'll notice there's no red lettering. The word Seamaster is also in blue. We have Coaxial master chronometer, 300 meters, which brings us on to the movement. Inside we have the caliber 8800, the newer coaxial based movement, which boasts a healthy power reserve of 55 hours, 35 joules, and operates at the rather unusual 25,200 vibrations an hour. But Omega specifically chose this to maximize its optimal performance. We of course have the George Daniels Coaxial Escapement. If you missed the last video, this was basically watch escapements have been fairly similar for the last 250 years. George Daniels had a revolutionary concept. He came up with a system that has smaller contact surfaces. The advantages are less friction, less lubrication, and of course less servicing required. It maintains accuracy over a longer period of time. Also, we have the SI14 silicon hairspring, which is new types of hairsprings that expand and contract in a concentric manner, which makes oscillations very precise and regular, and thus greater chronometric stability. These are impervious to magnetism, excellent shock resistance, and are resistant to magnetic fields reaching 50,000 gauss. Also, we see a free sprung balance with a full balance bridge for extra stability. This, of course, being automatic. It has bidirectional winding with, I believe, ceramic ball bearings. There is decoration. Some of the screws are oxidized and blackened rather than blued. We have Geneva waves in an arabesque style, and this is all displayed for you to enjoy with a sapphire display back. And I love the way they've done the wave edge to the case back, referencing, of course, the wave motif that is just so synonymous with the 300. So this particular movement is not only COSC certified, but it is approved by METAS. There's a fantastic article I highly urge you to check out on the testing that goes on at the METAS Center. I believe it's on monochrome, and it's utterly fascinating. These 300s are tested to 6 positions, also for their water resistance, their anti-magnetism, their shock resistance, the lot. So a very stringent and high standard of performance testing has gone into this. So how does this compare to the 27 jewel Omega 2500 automatic caliber found in the previous version? It's quite incredible to think that that particular caliber was introduced all the way back in 1999. So long overdue for an update. It did operate at 28,800, but Omega slowed it down to boost its longevity and its performance. The 2500 was the first Omega movement to include the coaxial escapement. Essentially, it's a modified ETA 2892 that was fitted with the coaxial escapement. It has a shorter power reserve of 48 hours compared to its successor. So in almost 10 years, the Omega 2500 has earned a reputation for being very reliable, requiring exceptionally low levels of maintenance. The newer 8800 was part of Omega's development to produce its own purpose-built calibers in order to fully optimize the potential of the coaxial technology. Among other enhancements, additional space was made for the escapement to optimize the kinetic chain and introduce some of the latest technology advances of the brand. And this explains part of the reason why this watch is bigger to house this newer caliber. The 2500 was only COSC certified, whereas its successor is a master chronometer and includes the METAS testing. If I unscrew the crown, which threads beautifully, I pull it out all the way, you can see it is of course hackable, just as we saw in the predecessor's movement. Manual wind and a quick set date are included. So the big question is, how does it wear? Well, let's pop it on the wrist and find out. Despite being larger in diameter, which I think actually makes more sense because it would be more legible, there's more dial there, and it certainly is more legible. It's not over the top. Now, I have 6¼ inch wrists, so for me, it's a little bit too large. You know, I prefer the mid-size, and unfortunately, this doesn't come in mid-size, which is a real shame. It's not overbearing. However, the weight is an astonishing 197 grams. While it wears very flat and it does hug the wrist, there's no overhanging, even on my tiny little wrist. It is rather heavy. If you compare to the older one, this was about 177 grams, just shy of 180, but that's with the full bracelet, probably even a little bit less. It does have a fantastic presence on the wrist. The superb richness of that blue has a kind of angelic quality in the way it changes. It's still quite flat. It's still that dressy diver that made the 300 such a great Bond watch. Anyway, let's talk about its positives and negatives. So let's start with the positives first. Well, undoubtedly, this represents the pinnacle of the Seamaster 300. It has been perfected in terms of its design, its functionality, the amount of innovation, proprietary technology in terms of the movement. You have the legacy there. You have the versatility, dressy enough for the office, but tough enough for any Bond mission. And that's what made the 300 so appealing. It is that do-it-all watch. You can go saturation diving, for God's sake. But still, it has a little bit of pizzazz with all these contrasting finishes. And talking of finish, the fit and finish is outstanding. The quality certainly is there. It's beautifully nuanced. I must admit, when it was first released, I saw it and I just dismissed it. And I thought, oh, they've just updated the dial and a few new colors and that's it. No, not at all. But inside you have some serious mechanical muscle. This truly feels like a luxury watch. These are superbly crafted. The razor sharp edges where the different finishes meet I think its value is also outstanding, especially in these days with Tudor coming up and the Black Bays trying to take the dominance of the below $5,000 mark. Omega had to step it up. These are just shy of 5,000. They're between 4 and 5. Whether you like the look, the aesthetics, if you forget about taste, on paper, they've refined it. They are certainly the most impressive specifications wise, performance wise, and of course they have the heritage there to back it up. Talking of heritage, I love the blued hands, especially that little nod, and you know, I discussed it in my Omega's Finest Hour video, which I really do urge you to have a look, because I tried to explain just how important, crucial their watches were, especially in World War II and the post-World War II era. Some may criticize this and say, oh, well, it's too dressy for a diver. They've gone away from their tool roots. Well, actually not at all, because unlike the Rolex Submariner that has always been a diver, it took a further couple of decades before it actually turned into a diver. Anyway, I've discussed that history before. This legitimately can be whatever it wants to be. They've encapsulated all of these different styles perfectly in a 300. So let's talk about the negatives. Well, I personally kind of miss the hippocampus on the back. I'll show it to you on the old one here. Fortunately, there is a sticker, so do ignore that. But that beautiful engraved seahorse there, I see that motif and I automatically think Seamaster. While I appreciate the display back and it's nice to see that cutting edge movement, not much of the rest of the movement is visible. So a little bit pointless. Also, by having a display back, it makes it a little bit thicker. I would have preferred just to have the engraving. I do feel it's a bit unnecessary. Look, I understand Omega are extremely proud, and they should be, of this amazing caliber, but you can't see the coaxial escapement, so I don't really see the point of it. Maybe that's just a matter of taste. Also, the new conical style helium escape valve, I preferred it when it was a little bit flatter. Actually, I just prefer the older one. I think it's not as doesn't jut out so much, as you can see there. But there's also that inherent problem, as you saw when I was operating the bezel, the scalloped edge. You know, that issue of, even with wet hands, sometimes you slip and you don't really get a good grip. Though I have to say, the action, if I compare the action to the old one, definitely an improvement. And lastly, you know, I really didn't want to criticize the size, but I don't understand why they went bigger. Everybody else is going smaller. Why would they go bigger? That's Planet Ocean territory, you know. It doesn't really make sense, especially as trends are going towards the smaller sizes. However, if you've got the wrists for it, then, you know, absolutely no problem. Although, having said that, it doesn't wear ginormously large. I wouldn't buy this. You know, I'm wearing mid-sized divers these days. The thickness, I don't really have an issue with. I still wish that the bracelet tapered. I think they could have cut down on some of that weight by having it taper. And also, I think tapering bracelets, well, there you go, tapering bracelets certainly look a little bit more elegant, in my opinion. However, I'm glad they stuck with the tank treads. It is just so synonymous with the Bond era. They've updated it wonderfully, but without losing the soul or look. But the big question is, would I actually buy this over its previous version? And this is where it really gets interesting. I have to say, forget about the size. I'd actually still buy the older one, despite having, you know, a dated clasp there and not all the high tech that the new one has. It just has more of the Seamaster charm. It's funny how we still prefer dated things, even when they are surpassed in almost every aspect by a superior watch. But that is the funny thing about watches. Rather fittingly, this goes into my last point, that, okay, it obviously has the design and style cues of the 300, but it doesn't feel like the 300, the very first one I bought way back in the day when I was, up all night murdering my friends on GoldenEye multiplayer. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's lacking that nostalgia thing. Having said that, in the short time I've been trying out this watch, I have warmed to it immensely. It does take a little while for you to appreciate this new version. Very fitting tribute for its 25th anniversary. I just wish it wasn't as statuesque. However, it is still pure class. It is still handsome, graceful, as a Seamaster should be. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I am thoroughly impressed. I feel that the title of the best luxury diver under 5,000 has kind of been dominated by the Black Bay, by Tudor. But this certainly is going to be difficult to beat. Whether it's good enough to take on the likes of the Submariner or the Tudor Pelagos, now that is the question. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. What do you feel about the new Omega down in the comments below? A massive thank you again to my good friend Derek at Moya Jewelers for making this possible. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.
This is a public service reminder for the good Gentry. Please follow us on Instagram, join the Facebook UGWC group, and click on the bell to keep notified of new videos. Don't forget to keep it positive, keep it Gentry, onwards and upwards. Thank you.